Welcome to Tea with Marie. This is indeed my podcast. Don't get to record many of these because I'm too busy doing other videos, but I do like the energy of these more expansive spaces where you can just pop your earphones in, go for a walk, cook dinner, do what you've got to do, listen at leisure, as I say. So the podcast, or rather the Tea with Marie, is very much kind of like chilled, just like talking and discussing certain subject matters which are very relevant to what we're going through at this particular time. Now, talking about that, for those of you that aren't familiar with the channel and how it works, I always get a directive from Spirit. I call it a creative directive. Obviously each month we're moving through energies, so many energies and frequencies, and I will always get a god or a goddess, mostly Egyptian, that will just come into my space and they'll be like, right, I'm going to be taking you through this month and beyond. And, because we're dealing with X, Y, and Z on our spiritual path of, this crazy spiritual path we call ascension, right? So this is where like the subject matters come from. And of course, this month being Joyous June, we are very much being held by Hathor, because we have been through such a journey that Hathor now arrives in our space. And Hathor is the goddess of so many things. Ancient Egyptian, absolutely. But Hathor is also the Hathors, which is a star being consciousness from Venus. Can be also tracked back to Sirius as well, but it matters not. It's all about the love codes. But Hathor, her ascended mastery, is all about divine union, sacred sexuality. It's about unconditional love for self, play, joy, singing, dancing, very inner child stuff actually, which is why I'm bringing in motherhood now for this podcast, Starseed Parenting, because in a way, some of the energy of that inner child playfulness, childlike awe and wonder needs to come back into our lives now as this life is magical. It's been pretty shit for a lot of us for quite some time. So I know when I'm saying these words, what magical life? You know what I mean? It's been quite an intense journey, hasn't it? But ultimately, that is what we're here to be, really. The full embodiment and celebration of life, just like the Egyptians did. They had festivals, they danced, they enjoyed. They celebrated life as much as they celebrated death. And that is basically like what we're here to do. And it's been very, very hard because as a starseed, you came here for a reason, to actually join the movement, to tip the scales, to bring the light back to Gaia, to Earth, to bring the golden age, through you into the Earth. And Gaia then shines through you and you put that out into the multiverse universe. So there is an absolute special divine mission that each and every one of us have come here to achieve. And I mean, really, like we could just cut straight to the quick and just say it's about coming back to heart, coming back to self, coming back to play, childlike awe and wonder. So why not talk about motherhood now? So I'm really going to go into it with Starseed Parenting because I have a lot to share here. And this week or this month, I'm going to be sharing videos with my kids because I thought it'd be really cool to see, what stories from a young Starseed and also what it's like to be a parent of a Starseed. But I also want to chuck in this mix as well. I don't want to pigeonhole any of this because I find what happens with all of the divine feminine goddess consciousness. I feel that the physical men, get maybe slightly pushed to the side, but I'm all about the men and women movement because a man can holds just as much divine feminine power as us physical women, right? So it's not a physical gender thing, is it? Divine masculine, divine feminine is present in both of us. Each and every living being with a heartbeat has to come into union in this life if they're going to live their best life, right? So a man can actually have serious motherhood energy, like have Hathor surging through them. Doesn't mean that they're not any less of a man. They're just deeply intuitive. They're in touch with their nurturing side and they know how to hold space, for someone that needs it. And also the mothers that don't have children. In my experience, I've had a more powerful connection with those that are mothers to many, but have not physically given birth. In fact, I want to honor Soraya now. Soraya is a medicine mom of mine who sadly passed away. Well, not sadly, actually. We celebrated her life. She did amazing work here. She was my ayahuasca mom, and she was the absolute depiction of mother energy. You know what I mean? And she had she was mother to all of us. Like, she had so many children, like millions of us. So that's what I'm talking about. I think it's the capacity to love, to nurture, and create such a safe space for others, right? Essentially, that's what motherhood is. So let's just take that off the gender and say this is for everyone, right? So now I'm going to be talking about very physical things to do with parenting starseeds, and I'm going to be talking about very spiritual stuff as well to do with parenting starseeds. So, and this is, like I say, the gospel of Marie, but I mean, like, my start into parenting was not a good one. I still sit here and I look at it, and I'm only at the ripe old age of 49, I'm nearly 50. Am I starting to look at myself as a mother energy? I've been told it, like, oh my God, you got such a powers of mother, but I'm like, no, I'm such a clown. I'm a real, I don't know. I still feel like I'm 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, always clowning around. And I think maybe that's why I connect with my kids so well, because I refuse to grow up. So that is why I've never really connected with myself as a mature mother type. But now I'm looking at it and I'm seeing all these young starseeds coming up behind me, because let's face it, I'm not a fossil, but there is a next generation that's coming up. So back in my day, when we were doing medicine circles and ceremonies, I was always feeling like the underdog and like less than, because probably our younger years, I was like, I was young, and, you look up to everybody else who is older than you. And there's no shadow of a doubt, when you go into your elder years, you are an elder. I mean, I'm going to be doing some videos and some chats on perimenopause. Don't even get me started on that. The rise of the feminine. You get your stripes when you kick into perimenopause, even more so when you get menopause, because your mother has died and you've now in crone age. And when I say your mother has died, she's died to actually be embodied into the fullness of her power. So not in a bad way. Maiden, mother, crone. So that is like the triple goddess, basically. So I'm moving into my crone years, not yet, but I'm stepping out of mother into crone. So that's an elder entitlement, I suppose, but in a healthy way entitlement. And that gives me good rise to talk about motherhood, because I'm now looking at myself going, maybe I am that mother type. Maybe I've got to that point in life that I nurture and hold space for so many others. So so that's an embodiment process in itself. So let's talk about my start to parenting. Okay, so now I was 23, fell pregnant, and then had my son Bevan when I was 24. So obviously, a lot of pregnancies are not planned. I just met my husband. Okay, at the end, I think it was like the end of the year. So it was about October, November. As soon as we met, 5 days later, he asked me to marry him. And I was like, oh my God, yes. And then January, so that was November. So then January, I'd already moved to Zimbabwe, got scared, wanted to run. Then Spirit was like, no, have a baby. Found out I was pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, all of this. And I was coming out of drug addiction. I just met my husband, who is now, and he was like, he's my twin flame, but he was just like, you can come, but that addiction and all that shit can't. So I agreed to do that. And I was in Zimbabwe, and I was like, already agreed to be married. Everything was on track. And then, oh my God, we on a stick, 2 lines. There's only supposed to be 1 line. There's 2 lines. Absolutely freaking out. A lot to deal with. Also, the fact that I just moved onto a farm, which was surrounded by war veterans, because they were in the middle of reclaiming farms, murdering farmers. Zimbabwe was at war. So I was like, who signed up for this life? So there I was, baby and belly, as it were. And I was just like, I wanted to run and hide. So my first connection with being a mother was to actually reverse it. And I didn't want to be a mother. I wanted to go to England and have the operation and just reverse time. And that was my biggest challenging time into parenthood, right? Because I just wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. But then flash forward, Bevan was my absolute awakening. My husband was my absolute awakening. And amongst all of that chaos, I chose them, and I decided to stay and face my fears. million miles away from home, probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, you know? But anyway, I came out the other side. So Bevan, my son, is my awakening factor to my purpose, right? And what's so interesting is that child of mine, every time this family needs to go through something or change direction, Bevan will go first and then our heads turn and we go that way. So he's like the instigator of this path as a family. He did it with Cape Town. We left Zimbabwe and came to Cape Town because Bevan moved here early. Do you know what I mean? So we have a very special connection like that. So my entry into parenting was not a good one. And it was all about kind of like breaking into pieces, really, actually. And it was my son that activated me into that. Now, this is the thing about kids, right? We sit there and a lot of parents dictate to their children, I am the law, wait till your father gets home, yada, yada, yada. Now, listen, I am all about discipline. I'm very old school as I am new school. Like Bevan, this is one thing I love about Africa, the way my kids have been brought up. If an adult walks in the room, Bevan stands up, he'll go straight up to the man, shake the hand, tip his hat, and give the chair to the woman, right? That unfortunately is missing, which is why I'm so blessed that my kids were brought up in Africa, because it's very old school here and we still have that. However, I have to find the divine balance in that, because the thing is, the other side of that is basically stifling kids, being very stuffy in their upbringing. Children were seen and not heard. So that's the other side of old school parenting in Africa. So I took the good stuff and then I parented my kids as a spirit guide. So I allowed their spirit to be strong and they could just be free and expressive with what they do. And I'm not here to dictate to them in that way, but I still instill discipline, right? Which means if you did something naughty, yes, you're going to get in trouble for it. And, and the Sekhmet's fire is going to burn your face off when I actually pile into you. Do you know what I mean? So it's known in this house. Do you know what I mean? So there's always been an unspoken word between me and my kids. Lie to me, fuck around and find out. Do you know what I mean? But if you tell me the truth, then I promise I'll never lose my shit. And to this day, these kids have told me certain things and I've had to keep my gob shut. But the nice thing is that way of parenting, they never really did anything wrong to the point that it needed anything, like it was anything bad. Nobody got murdered, nobody's been put in prison, and nobody's been like arrested yet, So that kind of like worked really well for me. So there was this whole identification, which took on a long journey for me on how do I parent my kids without letting them just run and spiral out of control, because I'm too spiritual and there's no rules here because we don't believe in discipline. Yes, I believe in discipline, but where's the line? Where's the line? So, look at kids now where kids are really, really behaving badly, and this whole woke mentality where we bend down to their level, all 2-3 years old of them. And we just say, let's discuss how you feel and your feelings. Why did you just do that? Can you explain to mommy why you just did that? What are you feeling? Can you name it? No, take him or her, sit him on the naughty step and say, do that again. And like I say, I refer to my previous comment, fuck around and find out. Do you know what I mean? That ain't going to cut it. See what happens then? Children are confused. Children need stability and they need some kind of structure, just like us. We need structure. We need discipline. Because if we sit here in our bra and knickers or our underpants and we eat pizza all day and we don't go to the gym because we're just living our best life and we're just going to give ourselves everything that we love, which, let's face it, most of the time is a cream cake, is a pizza, and maybe some glasses of wine. Where's that going to get us? We need discipline, we need structure. So in a way, the absence of parenting that child without saying, listen, there's consequences, buddy. Do you know what I mean? But you have a choice. You can choose raging Sekhmet or you can choose soft Sekhmet. It's entirely up to you. Choose. Yeah. So I think that's just the gospel of Marie. That's what I've just found out. That's just what I've just found out to be true, and actually works quite well for me. My kids, just for the record, are coming up. God, Ava is, let's start with Bevan. Bevan is actually turning 24 this year, and Ava is turning 19. And, it's like they're in London and they chose to live together, and they are both finding their passion through their choices of career. And I love that. And I think that, like, you know, with me being brought up, let's talk about that, kids and their careers. I mean, okay, I'm going to rewind here. This section is all about, like, you know, how to help your kids grow, how to hold them down when they're going through school and everything like that. And as I say, there is no right or wrong to this. We're all just figuring our shit out as we go. So how can we possibly be right or wrong about parenting, right? But there are some shady, shadowy bits to parenting I've come to see and I've come to find out, right? So rewind. I have never put all of my kids' achievements on social media. I just don't believe in it, because basically, you know, it's like, oh, Johnny did this and oh, Johnny did that. What's the underlying reason of that? Because you want the whole community to go, oh, your child's so clever. But what does it do? It basically also makes you feel shit about your child because Johnny didn't get like a fucking straight A. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, oh, let them just do what they have to do. Their accolades can be celebrated as long as mom and dad say, yeah, you're amazing. Send it to nan and granddad on the WhatsApp. Brilliant. Contain it. Just enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? But this outward splurge of like, you know, Johnny got straight A's and he's this, that, and the other. I ain't got time for it. And you know what? Let me tell you, I'm going to keep it super real that living in Africa and going to private schools here, because that's basically all that there is, you've got the beautiful people and then there's people like us, you know? And you know what I found in my experience is the beautiful people with basically, you know, like you look up to and go, wow, they've got, their life looks amazing. Guess what? They're living through their kids. You know what I mean? It's like I have been a teacher for a very, very long time. I did 19 years as an exercise specialist. So I bore witness because I trained rugby teams. I trained kids at school. I trained people's children in my own private gym because they had a certain hockey gift or cricket or whatever. The pushy parents, those kids are fucking exhausted. And I'm now the last point of the day where they're bringing them to me for me to train them. And they're just tapped out. They're like, do you know what? I just want to go home and Netflix and chill. And I've still got homework to do. And it's still 7:00 at night. And that parent is like, you got to go here. You got to go there. You got to do that. What is going on there? You're basically living through your own shortcomings. Maybe you know, a lot of these women, I can still see that they're living out their life as head girls. You're 50. Get over it. Do you know what I mean? But it's true. It's true. So now, and you know what? I'm going to put my hand up. I kind of like lived through my life of just basically feeling like the underdog at school. I'd never put my head up. I'd be like, yeah, you do you, boo. So that's why I kind of like parented privately, because I didn't really want to be seen with the cool crowd, because I just found them quite like full on and full out, and it actually triggered my insecurities more. So I would just stay away from it and just live in my bubble with my kids and just be like, woo, team us, you know. So to be fair, I'm not throwing shade on anybody here. I'll also highlight my stuff, my shadow of being a parent where, yeah, they might be still living their 50-year-old head girl, but I'm also living my 50, or back then I was, like say 30, 35, 40-year-old of just not feeling good enough in school. So, you know, we all play out those roles of school through our children. Isn't it interesting how that comes up? You know, like if your kid fails an exam or doesn't do very well or just fails at school in general, how much does that bring up inside of you? And you feel that child inside of you as well, right? So, you know, it's like a sidebar. It's just come into my head. You know, I love my mom dearly. Mom, I love you, but you used to give me really shit lunch boxes. You know what I mean? It's just like, she was all about saving money. So I would get Jacob's cream crackers with some butter on it, pushed together. We would never get like the real brand of chocolate biscuits. We'd have the generic brand. And when I used to go to my friends at school, would you like to swap with me? They were like, no. Do you know what I mean? So when I brought my kids up, I used to go and spend a fortune on their lunch boxes. Dairy Triangles, you know, proper name brand yogurts. I went all out. In fact, they ended up bringing that food back because it was a bit much, but I overcompensated for my lack in school is what I'm trying to say. And isn't it interesting that that plays out in things like that, right? So yeah, so basically living through your child, and you know, you see it. I would watch, even my husband was guilty of it. And we had to, I love my husband, Brendan, but Brendo, we had to sort him out. Didn't we, Bevan? If you're listening to this is my son. because Brendan would bust a vein stood on the side of Bevan's rugby field shouting at him, do this, do that. And I'd say, calm down, babe. You know, he's 10. Do you know what I mean? We're not playing the Springboks here. Chill out. You know what I mean? And Brendan would be so upset. And I'd be like, dude, you are playing out your shortcomings on your own rugby field through your son. The irony here was that Bevan was a cricketer. He was an opening batsman for cricket. And like, he wasn't even a rugby player. He's like skinnier than a beanpole. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, chill out. But that's a perfect example of seeing so many parents, you know, getting so frustrated and angry and shouting at the coaches because of the decision made with their kids. And it's just like, okay, who is this about? Is this about you or is this about them? So, you know, so that there's a shadow as a parent that can actually play out through our skills of parenting with our kids. And it's just something to have awareness on. And everyone's been through it. I've been guilty of it. Like, you know, overly protective with my child at school. I still am now. Anybody comes and messes with my kid or my cub, that's it. Like, you know, I'm like, the gloves are off, the earrings are out, and I'm like, you know, Sekhmet's in action, right? And I have to calm that down a little bit because most of the time my daughter or my son has got it and I don't need to have that protective prowess around them where I actually want to just kill someone because that's my cub, you know? So it's like, you know, like maybe I didn't feel that protected at school. I freaking hated school. And I really was my worst years, like most of us, because we don't conform. Those are the ones that are here to change the world. Those of you that bunked off school, I did all the time. Those of you that misbehaved in school, I did all the time. Those of you that just didn't fit in, you weren't supposed to, because you now understand yourself differently now, right? But that's what used to happen. I used to probably feel very unprotected. So when Ava or Bevan had problems at school, I'll be in there, bro. And they'd be like, Mom, you don't have to be in the playground sorting it out. And I did once actually with Ava. I went up to one of her bullies and I just kind of like went in there very passive aggressive to this true story to this. How old were they? 8 years old. And I was like, listen, honey. And then the office at the school was like, Mrs. Coverley, you can't do that. I said, I didn't threaten anybody. I just came down to her level and just looked her deep in the eye and just said, don't. So yeah. Anyway, shortly after that, we left that school anyway. But you see what I'm saying? You know, there's our pain of being a child will play out in how you parent your kids, right? So now here's my next subject that I want to talk about, right? Your child is not the Messiah. All kids are blessed. Every single one of them is blessed, right? So this is another version of living through our children, you know, and it comes from our own shortcomings. And we got to own that shit, man. It's okay. You know what I mean? Nobody came here absolutely perfect. You know what I mean? No shade, no judgment. But when we're actually projecting it onto the kids, it becomes a massive pressure for two reasons. So here you are saying, oh no, my little Johnny is so powerful. He is like, you know, he's like the Messiah. You know what I mean? He hears these beings and all, and you now put pressure on your child who is going to have to grow into that template, that identity that you forced upon them, and there's going to be a lot of pressure, or it's going to be the wrong energy that you're putting on them because they might have a completely different frequency. So there's a pressure to perform there. Oh my God, do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, you distort the child's connection to their own connection to source. Eckhart Tolle says it beautifully. He says children are not given to you. They are not born of you. They don't come out of you. They come through you. Your only job as a parent is to hold space for that little starseed because they have a mission just as much as you do to complete. And it is not for you to get involved thinking you know better just because they're your child. Again, it goes to boundaries and setting structure, which is basically the divine masculine and the divine feminine perfectly balanced in their process to evolve, right? So it's for us to, I mean, I've done this with my kids. I'm not saying I'm the perfect parent because I've got a lot wrong. I got a lot wrong. When I first had Bevan, I was still coming out of my drug addiction and I had a bit of a relapse. And I completely rejected motherhood and him. And I went off on a bender, several benders. And I'm now able to speak about that because there was a lot of shame that came from that. But equally so, he chose me as that mother to have the experience of being the underdog. Because once I cleared that up with Bevan and I did a lot of healing work with him, actually when he was 10 years old, Spirit actually brought it up. I didn't force it. He was just very ready to have that conversation, and we worked on it together, and I didn't force him, but we cleared all that energy up. And blow me down, after that, what was very, very apparent and like, whoa, he was still on a mission to figure out the shadow of being the underdog, to claiming his power. So I was just an aspect of that, but I carried all this guilt and shame thinking I was the factor of his demise. And it wasn't. By taking responsibility for my shadow, I then realized that by me doing that helped him on his mission. So yeah, God, I tell you that there's no right or wrongs here, and there's no perfect parenting, but there is about taking responsibility for your shadow. Do not project onto your child. Allow them the space to find themselves, but put in healthy, strong boundaries and protection so it's not too overbearing, so they can find themselves. So your child is not the Messiah. I would love to say that they are, but they're not, because let's keep it real, because it also comes up in adults as well, that I get have many conversations with people, and it's not even a Gospel Marie here, it's fact. Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, and others like them, they were light conceived. What does that mean? That means that the seed to have a baby was placed within them through light conception, which means the only DNA that was physically present at that time was that of the mothers, right? The physical DNA of the masculine, that was the light conceived bit. So it's absolute physical impossibility for anybody to say that they're an incarnation of, or a reincarnation of these star beings, which are in physical form. So, but I mean, like any other powerful being or whatever that was conceived, you know what I mean? Mother, father, both DNA. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lineage that you have, that you can follow there. So this whole thing of just thinking your child is more special than the others, again, can you see where I'm coming from here? You're wanting to elevate your child for your own lack of your own confidence in your own spiritual power. Right? So there is an awareness and a big responsibility that one must have to be a parent. And that is why back in the days of Atlantis and, even Lemuria to a point where not everybody had children. And this is a bit of a sidestep as well, where everybody's just not every woman's expected to get married and bang out a couple of kids, right? My sister doesn't have children. It was chosen. There's a lot of women that I know are like, oh, hell no. That's not my mission. No, I don't want to do that. Because it's not for everybody. And isn't that the way you get married? People say, oh, when's the baby? Well, what about just getting married? Can we just not have union? Why does there have to be this societal pressure to have children? It's not for everyone, is it? I didn't choose it, chose me. I mean, mine was an unplanned pregnancy with Bevan, and holy shit, did it take me through my paces. Ava was planned, and I couldn't get pregnant with her. There's the irony. I had to work very hard. I had to have operations for her to be able to incarnate. You know what I mean? So babies were not gifted for everybody, because that is we all have different jobs that we said we come here to do, and not everybody said that they would parent children, because there's other people to do that, like me, like you, if you're a mother and you're listening to this, or you're a father. So that is the whole thing. It's we are all blessed, right? And being a starseed parent is being a chosen collective, right? But it's not all sunshine and light. And, and I see so many people manipulating it, which is just not cool. I'm sorry, but it's not just cool. Like I say, my podcast is very to the point, and I'm just going to say it. And I'm just I watch videos on Instagram. I have to share this really fun video. So there was obviously they put the camera up, and the mum was very spiritual. And she's all just yeah, we just we make our own bread. I wish I was like that though, in truth. But I have to go to the supermarket and buy it, because it's just I'm not good in the kitchen. I don't make muffins. I'm pretty shit at that. My mothering skills do not go to the kitchen. That was a shortfall. So I'm no judgment. She bakes her own bread. Brilliant. But you know what I'm saying? It was this complete display for social media purposes of, how spiritual their kids are and that they meditate. Now, she's got a 3-year-old on her lap. Okay, so picture the scene. Husband's there, meditating. It's all so serene. There is another child behind them, which is probably about 8 years old enough to know that mom said, sit there, shut the fuck up, look spiritual and stuff, and hold your what are they called? Yeah, your mantras, like with your fingers, like look all like, spiritual and, in your position. And then she had her other child on her lap and she was holding this child. But you could see this 3-year-old is struggling to get from the grip of her mother's arms, but she's clamping this child down while they're perceived to be all meditating together as a family because they're so spiritual and amazing and just perfect. And this kid is wriggling and you can see that she's actually holding him in such a tight grip. All he wants to do is go and jump into the garden and pull the legs off crickets, you know what I mean, and eat worms. That's all he wants to do. Why can't we share videos of that? Of feral children just basically breaking up things, smashing up things, jumping in rivers, snot running down their lip where their hair is stuck in their snot. I mean, I love that. That's how my kids grew up. Do you know what I mean? And in fact, that's how I grew up. That's real. That's real. But this whole imagery that parents want to put out there as they're the perfect picture of the Starseed family. There is no perfect picture. We're all just trying to figure it out. And the more authentic and real you are, the better. Kids get addicted to drugs. Kids have meltdowns. Kids have issues, behavioral issues. I have been through some dark times with my kids, right? I have been through dark times with Ava and Bevan. Ava wanted to leave the planet several times. And she wasn't quite on suicide watch, but she was a starseed that struggled with everything, She was that kid, that dark kid that was just so in her emotions that she didn't have any friends, you know what I mean? And I battled with that. And I was just like, because I wanted my child to be happy, but I couldn't help her. And, it was just like, it was hard. It was hard as a parent. It was hard for her. So parenting starseed kids is not easy. Why don't we talk about that a little bit more? Do you know what I mean? So there's this whole thing of spiritual parents projecting or displaying or creating this perfection perception, and it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. But then I go one step further beyond. Let's leave the spiritual stuff behind. Why don't we just basically live life? Why do we do videos of us just dancing like nobody's watching? Why do we do videos of just having fun and funny things? I don't know about you, but let's just break it down to this. What do you spend more time on social media? Watching funny cats doing funny things in videos, or the other stuff? I'm telling you, you should see my Instagram feed. It's all about funny cats. Do you know what I mean? It's all about people falling over and just funny shit. You know what I mean? That's life. That makes me feel happy. And look at what has the most views, 4.5 million views. It's always going to be of something funny, endearing, a raccoon sitting on a baby's lap. Oh, it's so cute. Do you know what I'm saying? That's parenting. That's basically real stuff. It's nice. You know what I'm saying? So no more projecting shit onto our kids, please. Own your shit. Take responsibility of that and let the kids just do their thing. Just let them live their best life, So what else have we got to talk about here? I've got a whole list, So I've spoken about your kids do not come out of you, they come through you, quoting Eckhart Tolle, okay? So your kids are your biggest teachers, right? We kind of think maybe that we are theirs. We're not. They are your biggest teachers. I've spoken about it a lot, where Ava will just basically come into my space. She just spirals me into my dark shit. And it's not in a bad way. She just knows on a subconscious level, on a soul level, we've agreed on stuff. So when she exits a scene, like she came to Avalon with me and she suddenly turned around and left, that spiraled me into my deep grief walk. She didn't know that she was doing that consciously. She was just doing Ava, and she left, and it was just like really intense and took me to that place, like I've spoken about. Bevan, my son, he's the one that makes us move countries. He left Zimbabwe considerably earlier than when we planned, and that just threw us all into disarray. He actually had an emotional breakdown. He actually had a proper psychological breakdown when he went to Cape Town before us without us, and he couldn't cope. And that's why we had to move early, because he actually Yeah, he actually went through a massive emotional breakdown. So he changed the course of this whole family. So these kids, without realizing it, do you know what I mean, dictate the path of the family collective, right? So this is where I'm saying your child is your biggest teacher. They will always reflect and mirror back to you your shit. So before we go into like, you know, handing out disciplines and you know, maybe getting a bit heavy-handed and giving them hidings, which I don't actually do because I had so many hidings as a kid. I believe that we can bring discipline and teach the lessons in a much more impactful way. I mean, it's not to sit there and be like, kumbaya, yeah, no problem that you did that and you went out on a 4-day bender and you're a kid and you've done drugs. No, I'm not going to condone that at all. You know, believe me, I'm going to discipline that. But there is a conversation that needs to be had to be able to extract the lessons from what they did so they can learn and grow. However, let's go back to that example. If they did go out on a 4-day bender and they're kids and they're obviously not supposed to be doing that, do you know what I mean? That's like completely not right. Then what did that bring up in you? So there is there is a moment to take responsibility of what that is coming up inside of you. So you to address that and then deal with your child as well. So you know, it's really, really kind of like understanding that these kids will always reflect back to you that which you need to know. And I'm going to end this podcast now here because I would like to end this with a profound message from my medicine mommy, who's now passed away, Soraya, who was mother to so many. And I would like to honor her with this podcast because she was my ayahuasca mommy and she had such a profound effect on everybody's life. And she was a mother to many, especially when we were in ayahuasca ceremonies. You know, she could hold space, man, you know, and she did. Now, I remember doing ayahuasca with her probably about a year before she passed. And I remember we were just in my house in Zimbabwe and we'd done about 4 ayahuascas preparing me to go to Peru because it was intense. And I remember at the time I was having terrible time with Ava in her younger years as a starseed, getting to grips with all the dark forces and the psychic attacks and things like that she was feeling, that she was having from school, from bullying, in her dreams. It was intense, man. And that was a very, very disempowering time of my life as a starseed mom going, what the fuck do I do with this child? How do I stop this? I had no control. And then I was just spent. I was tapped out. And we did ayahuasca. We called in mother, because that's what ayahuasca is, mother. And, you know, Soraya sat with me and I'll never forget this. She looked me deep in the eyes, and this is when we were on the medicine, and she said, heal yourself and your children will heal. And at the time, I thought, that's the biggest load of shit. How's that going to help me? I remember thinking that. I'm feeling bad for thinking that. And then 6 months, a year later, even now, I know exactly what she was talking about. Heal yourself and your children will heal. Everything is your movie. If there is something playing out in your life, and in this case, we're talking about children, it is a reflection from you. So if you heal your inner wounds to do with anything that's coming up for you, if you will give yourself the awareness and the time to go into your own shadow self and not fear that, then you heal that. Then as a reflection of you, which is your children will heal. I don't know how this changed everything because these are the unspoken words and probably something that I cannot verbalize, or how to give you the step-to-step process on what that actually really means when I applied it. But let me tell you, my kids now will always be on their journey. There's always going to be shadow to deal with because in the shadow there's growth. So let's keep it real that it's never, you know, we're not going to live the perfect life. We're not here to do that. We're here for the shadow and the light, right? And that's what keeps the wheel turning. But as far as the heavy shit goes, Ava and her dark attacks, let's say, because she's a very, very, very bright light. Bevan with the same thing, but he's got his own version of it. I'm feeling so helpless and not being able to help them. And then like just dealing with my own shit and then coming up for air and looking at the kids and going, holy shit, they changed. As a result of me healing my childhood pain, they in turn healed. So were they ever the problem, or were they always the teachers? That's a great place to end this. So, sending, as always, so much love from my heart to yours. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for having tea with Marie. Until the next time, as as I always say, peace.